2004, I was able to fire my boss. I actually walked in the office and said, I quit. They begged me to stay. And I was like, no way, it's taken away from my business. So what's up, guys? Rick Ginn here with Flip with Rick. And I get so many of you guys who ask, hey, Rick, how'd you get started in real estate? Tell me a little bit about your journey. And I started thinking about it. I actually started back in 03. Technically 04, I joined the business full time. So I've been doing this, I'm not a mathematician here, almost 16 plus years. And actually, time flies. I had a blast doing it and I still do it. So let's just walk you through. And that way you can learn from my story and hopefully you can take some lessons out of it. So back in 2003, well, let's start before that. I took advice from my parents, which I love them very much, but my dad taught me that I need to get a good college education to get a good job, and I did that. So I got my finance degree from the University of South Florida, and that was back in, let's just say the early 90s. 94 is when I graduated, and I got a degree in finance because I was always fascinated with money. So it was always a huge fascination of mine. And I figured I might as well know about money. I assumed I'd wind up in a sales position. So fast forward, I graduated and I joined, I took a lot of sales jobs. So my first sales job is I actually sold boats. And I did it for a tiny little company out of Miami. And I'd go around boat shows and stuff like that. And I mean, I've always loved fishing, but there was just only so much money to make. The commissions were small. And so I decided to make a shift. I actually wound up working with, what's the name of it? New York Life. And I learned some valuable insights from there. They taught me how to do door-to-door sales, really hardcore stuff. And that was probably the moment I realized that everything I learned in college was going to be thrown out the window. But anyways, I wound up working at that company for just over a year. And then I wound up taking a management position, a sales trainee manager for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And that was in, 2004. So basically what you would do in that position is the branches opened up at 8 o'clock in the morning, they closed at 6 at night, and you would work through, and based on your sales ability, they would promote you through the management position. So I did very well. I always knew how to sell. Fast forward, I climbed the corporate ranks. So 2004 to, I was with Enterprise Rent-A-Car for 10 years. And the last 2 years, I just watched boss after boss get fired. They were so insecure. They never knew if they were going to be working the next day. And then these people were transferring all over the country. So I grew up in South Florida. I love South Florida. I love the fish here. I love being with my family. And at that time, I got married while I took my corporate career. And I was making 6 figures. So money really wasn't an issue for me. I just got tired of like playing the corporate ladder game. So any of you that can experience it, I sought out to take control of my financial destiny. So one of the main things that sparked me off though is back in, I want to say 95, 96, just when I got started with Enterprise Rent-A-Car, I picked up a book by Tony Robbins, and at the time it was called Awaken the Giant. I actually picked it up in a garage sale. I will tell you that book just blew my mind away with the endless possibilities of what you can actually do with your life. And I never really thought from that perspective. See, my father always taught me to get a good education and a good job. And I stuck to that program and I gave it 10 years. And what I learned is it wasn't going to get me where I truly wanted to go. So I made the leap. So I started researching and I read a few real estate investing books, and the Tony Robbins book allowed me to really open up my mind as far as what is truly possible. Long story short, I wound up going to a real estate investing, I guess they called it a workshop, Back then, you would actually go, they played on either the TV or the radio, and there was very few of them playing at the time. And I found this guy and this gal, and they were going to teach me how to do real estate investing locally. So I went, I listened to the pitch, I actually brought my wife, actually I brought some friends, and I listened to it multiple times. And it just sounded too good to be true at the time. So I decided I was just going to give it a shot. I was just going to go for it. To be honest with you, I was scared out of my mind. And I didn't do this till I was 33 years old. So I want you to understand, if you're even having struggles in your, say you're in your early 20s, you were so far ahead of where I started. So it doesn't matter when you start in real estate investing. It just matters if you follow through and do it. So back in 2003, I attended it too, and then I sat down with my wife. She did get excited about it, and we decided to make the plunge. So here's the funny part is, I want to say I paid $5,000 or $6,000, which is a lot of money back to me then. And I hired this mentor. And I went into it not really knowing anything. And in a nutshell, they taught me how to buy properties for a good deal with a realtor off of MLS. And so I learned, at the time, the whole program was based on the 1% rule. So if you've never heard of the 1% rule, it's if you bought a property for $100,000, it had to at least rent for $1,000. And that would give you a program to, the cash flow would pay the property off in 10 years, and then it would help you basically retire in life. Dude, it sounded like the perfect plan for me. They told me all the positives about the cash flow, the 1% rule. I quickly went out and looked for a certain type of realtor that would work with an investor. And I quickly picked up 3 rental properties. Now, I went and got traditional loans. They were cash flowing probably $350 a month. I thought that's great. The problem is I got the property number 4, and then the banks wouldn't give me a loan after that. So I said, great, what do I do now? And I went back to the mentor. He's like, well, no, you've kind of done everything. You just got to wait your 10 years out and go from there. I said, I don't want to do that. I think there's a lot more opportunity. I just need to get in front of more sellers. And he quickly told me, I don't really know how to do that. That's in a whole other realm. And so I started doing research. Now, you've got to understand this. Back then, there was no YouTube, no Facebook, no Instagram. There was no forums. If you wanted to do research, you'd have to attend, you'd have to find some sort of conference. So I found a real estate investor conference. At the time I went in, up in Atlanta. So I discovered wholesaling, which I was really excited about. I dragged my wife to it. And we took like a 3 or 4 day conference, and I saw, back then it was Russ Whitney. It was Carlton Sheets was doing some tail end stuff, but not a lot, but on creative financing. I hooked up with Robert Sheeman, great guy, got me excited about wholesaling, and just a whole host of people. But Peter Conti was one of the guys who really sparked my interest on how to engage more and more sellers with creative financing and wholesaling. And 2004 rolled around. Now I'm still working in my corporate job. So the plan was to replace at least 6 to 9 months of my income. So I already had steady cash flow on the rentals, but the banks wouldn't give me any more loans. So I ventured off into wholesaling. And I gotta tell you, I was literally scared out of my mind. There was nothing to follow. So what I did is I networked with people at the local real estate investor associations, also known as REIA. If you guys have not connected with a local REIA, I highly suggest this. It's a great place to find the players in your market. And if you want to do joint ventures and work with them, you find people who lend you money, mortgage brokers, real estate agents that do investing. You just get to learn the whole 9 yards of it. And that was it. I collected my rental properties and I decided I was going to go into wholesaling. So I want to talk to you about my Rick Ginn's first wholesale deal. And you never forget the first deal you do. So the rental properties, I didn't really make any money because you just bought them and I was cash flowing on them. So now at the time I learned how to network with real estate agents. So at the time I would either find a brand new real estate agent that was excited as hell about real estate, and those were my niche realtors, and they would work their butt off for me and find a huge list of properties. Because remember, back in 2004, no access to MLS, no softwares, no CRMs. You actually had to go and work with a realtor and actually have to physically pull the listing. So I would do that, or every now and then I would find an older realtor that just wanted to work with investors, only serious investors, and that was it. Either they were usually 60 or older, or they were usually under the age of 30. And that was my niche. Everybody in between never seemed to fit. And for some reason, I found the women just were easier to network in real estate. So you make sure you take care of them. You give them listings, and so the trade-off happened at the time. So a realtor actually brought me a deal, and here's the neat part, which I understand. It was actually her parents' house down in Fort Lauderdale. So if any of you guys been to Fort Lauderdale, I grew up down there. I knew the area. It was an area called Las Olas, and it was a waterfront property. Now, I didn't really even understand the value at the time because I was so focused on wholesaling. So we came up with a number. I went down there. I drove with the realtor. I met with her parents. I gotta be honest with you, I didn't even know what I was doing. I just knew how to talk to people. So I would go in, and my trademark is, see, every other investor taught me I had to bring this pad, I had to bring a pen, I had to like barrage them with questions, where I just walk around the house, look at the pictures, and just start talking to them. And the old people always loved me for that because I got to know them, their family, the history there. So they've been in this house 35 years, raised their family. It was a waterfront property, although they really never had a boat or anything. And the house was a little bit run down. I knew there was high demand for this house. I didn't really know the value at the time. I just wanted to flip it and generate cash. Remember, 6 to 9 months of income is what I wanted to create. So at the time, I put it under contract. God, I can't even recall the price. I think it was like $150,000, maybe $180,000. It needed a lot of work. It needed a complete makeover. So I put it under contract, and I used the assignment method, and I wanted to test my theory out. This one was I found a rehabber that was rehabbing the neighborhood, and how I found him is there was a dumpster outside one of his properties, like a mile down the road. So anyways, he took a look at the house with me. I took him over there and, asked me how much we needed for it. And so I had it, I want to say 180,000 was the number. I thought it was 150, but it's 180. Remember, this is 16, 17 years ago. So 180, and I threw out the price as I told him I needed $190,000. So at $10,000 time, I thought I was actually killing the guy. And he said, yeah, no problem. He says, but listen, I do like bank financing. I didn't even know you could do it at the time. So he actually wound up getting some sort of loan through Bank of America. And back at the time, you could actually collect an assignment fee on a finance properties. Banks never said a word about it. And I remember getting that $10,000 check and like showing it to my wife. And I was like, man, I have literally just discovered gold. So I took action. I had a game plan, and I proved it. And once you do your first deal and you prove that you can make money, your job then is just to duplicate that strategy. And then if you get really good, you learn how to scale it. Don't worry about scaling off the bat, just validate the proof of the concept. It worked. So the funny part about it is 10,000, I thought I killed the guy. I was ecstatic. I'm like, man, imagine if I could do 2 or 3 of these deals a month, I could quit my job a lot sooner. Still have my corporate job. So I had a mortgage, I had a family. At the time I had little kids. So Zach was probably 3 or 4 when this all happened. So just to kind of show you guys the progression. So the guy, I followed up with him in the house. He actually rehabbed the whole house. Absolutely gorgeous how he did it. And he sold it. And ready for this? He called me up thanking me, begging me for more properties. He made $230,000 off of the flip. Now, I didn't mind. At the time, $10,000 was a lot to me, but I just want you to understand, he was already in the market. He knew the value. I didn't know the value of the property. I was just told never to make less than $10,000. So I kind of came up with him because I was nervous. I made 10 grand. He made $230,000. I never look back after I sell a property. It is what it is. If they lose money or they make money, that's theirs. Most people make money from my properties. But that also helped me explain, wow, how could I get in his shoes to be able to do that? So that's the first property I flipped. I went on from that point. I became a master of direct mail. So at the time, remember, no SMS. We had, I don't even have it in front of me, we had the old style flip phones. Like caller ID was the most revolutionary idea we've ever seen. The internet was there, but it was slow, it was cumbersome. Google just started to take off. So I hung my hat on direct mail. Remember, I didn't have a guru really to teach me. I went down to the county to pull the records. I would actually go and get a CD. At the time, we were just starting to use discs from the floppy disks down to the 3.5 inch. And then we moved over to CDs. So I go down to the county, I pull all that, and then we put it in an Excel file. And then I had to learn how to sort the data myself, and then I would find some people that would help me out. At the time, there's no Upwork. You had to figure local people to help you sort data. So we did the mailings, and my revolutionary idea at the time was to hand address the envelopes. So I would do a whopping 200 or 300 mailers, maybe in a given week, which was a lot. And we would just print off like a template letter form, and we stuffed it in there. I gotta tell you, man, the phone literally rang off the business was so well for me at the time. If I would let my voicemail fill up. Now fast forward today, we answer all calls live, and we go out of our way to take the time to answer every phone call. Back then, it was just me. So phone calls would come in, I'd have 50 or 60 voicemails, and I would work my way through them. I would use the voicemail to gauge their motivation so I didn't waste my time. Man, I think back to how that all worked out, and it's just crazy. I didn't even realize what I had at the time. So anyways, long story short is we hand addressed the envelope. We found that we got between a 20-25% response rates because everybody thought it was a personal letter and they opened it up. We stuffed in what we called a static print, was just, hey, I want to buy your house cash. My name is Rick. And we used to have a form on the bottom that they would cut off like a coupon and mail back if they wanted to sell the house. And it was consistently filling my mailbox and filling up my voicemail box. So I wound up, in the next year, I amassed 26 rental properties. Remember, I had 4 before, so it was really 22. I was flipping, generating cash. To be honest with you, I thought life couldn't get any better. Now, funny thing happened. Remember my 10-year plan to pay off all these rental properties? Well, here in South Florida, we got hit with back-to-back hurricanes at the time. I had leaky roofs, I had windows blown in. I mean, I had a catastrophe on my hand. And then what happened? The renters stopped paying the rent. The mortgage companies, they demanded their payment. They give you 1 or 2 month forbearance. But it actually wound up being a complete nightmare because at the time I was the property manager. So I had a tough time going out and getting new deals. and managing all the claims on the properties, and then the tenants, they wound up being a nightmare. We had a lot of problems with the property. Roof leaks were the biggest thing. And then during the hurricanes, business was never better than ever. So I was just like, man, what do I do? So I didn't really learn how to hire people real well at the time. So what else do? You just recruit your wife to help you out. Bottom line is, it took me 2 years to clean that mess up. And during those hurricanes period, there were so many damaged houses. I would contract, at one point I had excess of 20 contracts on properties. And the problem is we couldn't get labor in to fix it. There was no roofers. You couldn't get drywall, and that's how we came up with the whole Chinese drywall thing specifically in South Florida. So I survived the hurricanes. Okay, I'll make it. It was more stressful than I want to be. I decided the 10-year plan was not going to work out. I didn't like rentals. So at that point, I started liquidating my rental portfolio. So what do you think happens next? Well, 2007, 8 rolls around, the big mortgage implosion happens. And I gotta be honest with you, I sold a lot of those properties, some of them I lost the money on. So that 10-year plan I originally signed up, it didn't work. The problem is I never experienced being a landlord. I didn't know all the risks and the associations that go with it. And fast forward, if you want to be a landlord, just make sure it's something you want to do. Most people tell you like how super sexy it is. There's a lot of downside with it. So 2008 rolls around. So here we are, 2008. I'm winding down my rental properties. I'm not making money on the sales. There's the rental rates are dropping. So in my area, which at the time, Port St. Lucie was my main market, just to let you know, rental rates rolled back almost 50%. So something renting for $1,200, $1,300 was $600 or $700. And then the market dropped. I mean, the houses were 20 and like 30, like crazy numbers. Like we saw more than a 50, 60% drop in values. So it made me question everything I learned about real estate. And I always enjoyed the wholesaling aspect of it. To be honest with you, I had very, very little competition. And whatever competition we had, we all worked together and we shared inventory and sold properties together. So 08 to 09 was probably the hardest years I ever had in real estate. It just, nothing was selling. Everybody was sitting on the sidelines waiting for rock bottom to happen. So traditional wholesaling didn't work. And if you did, you were making just a couple bucks to get by. Or actually, I think a realtor actually did better than I did at that time. So what I did is I discovered how to do a short sale flip. So what happened is all the properties were pretty much upside down. So a short sale is nothing more than when, say you owe $200,000 on a property, but it's only worth $150,000. And say you lost your job with the economy. So you can apply to the bank to get a short sale, and you're basically asking for permission to sell the property less than the loan the bank has on that property. So I took a course and I learned how to flip short sales. Scared out of my mind, how am I gonna make this work? It has to work, let's give it a shot. So we went out and marketed, and it was really easy. We did a direct mail campaign for anybody that was even slightly late on their mortgage payment. I think we got a 30% response rate on it, and I couldn't believe there was that many customers out there. So long story short, there was no rules or regulations on short sales. The homeowner just had to qualify for them. So on a short sale, you can't just do it because the market turned upside down on your property. You have to have a loss of job, some sort of stressful event in your life that you can document to the bank. So what I did is I found someone that I could train to help me negotiate the process with the bank. And so she would do all the paperwork, and then I worked with realtors, and then I did the marketing, and I put this whole system together. So the really cool part is we started doing it. So short sale flipping is basically you put an offer on the property and you basically have an option to close on it or not. So if we put an offer on the property, say we put an offer at $100,000 and we found They owed $200,000 on the mortgage. We put in for $100,000, and we found a buyer for $130,000. Then we basically orchestrated that whole deal. Like, this would be an entire seminar if I taught you how to do short sale flips, which I do, by the way. So I'll get into that. So at any given time, I'd have 40 to 60 properties under contract, and we close 1 to 3 properties a month. Huge profit margins. I actually enjoyed it. So really from 09 to 2012, that's all I did. Short sale flips, short sale flips, short sale flips. I did over 100 of them. And it was actually a lot of fun. Now, what happened is people caught on to what we were doing, and the banks put in rules and regulations. Like back then, you could do whatever you want with a short sale. If you do a short sale, if you buy a short sale, say from a realtor, most of the time the bank has what they call a 90-day deed restriction. And what that means is you can't resell the property for 90 days, which basically eliminates wholesaling on those properties. So back then we didn't have all these restrictions. As it became more mainstream, the banks figured it out and they started putting restriction after restriction. Their whole goal was to discourage investors like me from flipping properties. So that's it in a nutshell. From 2009 to 2012, we completely dominated the short sale flip market. So that was the exciting. Actually, I really enjoyed that time. So although I was horrified and scared to death from 2009 to 12, I basically had to reinvent who I was as an investor because traditional wholesaling didn't work in 2012. So at that time, wholesaling was now just coming back into play. It was actually a viable option. So I said, let's do the short sale flips and let's do the wholesaling. Now, one huge difference is I've learned up to this point, so 2003 to 2012, I've learned if you do one thing and you only learn one thing and you never decide to enrich your real estate education, you're going to be pegged in a hole and it's going to cost you big time. So the problem at the beginning is I decided I was going to be a landlord, I was going to pay the properties off. That didn't work out as I showed you. And then I said, listen, I've discovered gold with wholesaling. This is dynamite. Well, the problem with wholesaling is when you get recessions or even potential depressions, which we're talking about possibly coming up here, there's not as much activity in wholesaling and it's actually not very profitable. So unless you do alternative means, creative financing, short sale flips, note buying, lease options, you're going to be stuck. So wholesaling is a great way to get started in the business, and I recommend it to everybody, but you've got to really complete your game. So I came up with a coin term, flip with Rick. I want to help people out. People always come to me, hey Rick, can you help me do this? Can you help me do that? I said, what the heck? Let me go ahead and help you out. So what I did is my specialty and what I could teach people is I discovered how to do niche marketing products. So I told you I was a master at direct mail. So I took direct mail and I dominated it. So I took the things that worked out of direct mail. And at the time I was playing around with getting a postcard and putting my letter in the postcard because the letters were costing me like 75 cents to put together. And it was a very long, tedious process. So I decided, I had a brainstorm. What if we put the letter on a postcard and then we remember in the beginning I started just handwriting the envelope. Let's make it in a handwritten font on the postcard. So at the time I was working with a very small mail company with a young lady. I want to say she printed my mail out of her basement, you can tell. And I asked her if she could put that help me put that together. So after months and months of figuring out, we did it. And what we did is we took a regular home printer and we printed what we called the handwritten postcard system, and that was born. Now, I had a response rate consistently over 25%. I'd mail out 500 mailers and my voicemail box would be full. Yeah, it was a real problem at the time. If I got back it often took me 3 to 5 days even to get back with sellers. And I would limit my mailings to like $500. So I also learned at the time that spending a ginormous overhead and having an office and all these employees is not impressive. At the end of the day, it's what you keep and how much time you have to spend in the business is what really matters the most. The handwritten postcard system, and so I used it in my business for a year. So here we are, 2013, I documented the entire process. And I would start to share it with people I networked across the country. And at the time, I wanted to test it in other markets other than my own. So I would have colleagues which were very deep into the real estate business try it out. I think Rob Swanson was a good friend of mine at the time, and I used a lot of his products when I first started. And he said, let me test it out. So Rob tested out his market. He's like, man, you've discovered gold here. And I tried 3 or 4 other markets. Everybody kind of said the same thing. So I decided to make a offering. I believe I made an offering on, I want to say it was Facebook. And remember, Facebook it wasn't nothing like it was now. I think I sold 40 or 50 products in a 24-hour period. And I tested something out that was going to work. So I made it all DIY, you could do it at home. And then I went back to the drawing board and formulated a more formal sales process, set up a sales system, and that launched the handwritten postcard system. And actually it wound up being one of my most successful products ever because it was simple, it was what I love to do, which is marketing. It was a niche, and it got people's phones to ring. So at this point, I got gurus coming out my ears. In 2013, for some reason, was the year like all the gurus decided to wake up and do this because wholesaling, in my opinion, was really easy. The problem is all they did is teach basic wholesaling. And the problem with that is it's a one-trick pony, and it worked right up to 2019 for just about everybody. So I decided I was going to formulate products that focused solely around marketing niches. So we created actually at the time I came up with the Flip with Rick. It was a catchy phrase, and I was helping people out all across the country. And before I knew it, more people sought me out. Social media started. To be honest with you, I never really embraced it. I've always been a hardcore investor. So there's 2 types of real estate gurus out there. Number 1 is the guy who just flips real estate. It's what the guy or gal, it's what they love to do, it's their passion, and they never want to get away from doing it. That's me. Now, I love helping people with products and inspiring them, but at the time, I didn't want to do it like a dedicated coaching business. So the second type of guru is all their time and energy is spent on coaching, and it's actually probably about 90% of their income. I don't know, man. That's not who I am. So most of my money is made through real estate investments. So as long as I'm in the game doing that, it's more natural for me to teach. If I switched over and did coaching and then 90% of my revenue came from there, you're teaching old tricks, in my opinion, because you don't know what's going on in the market. There's been so much change really in the last year. If you're coaching, there's no way to keep up with it. And there's nothing like a coach who does it in their own market. So here we are, 2013. I'm doing everything from flips, rehabs, a lot of rehabs. I hired one person just to handle the rehabs. I'm keeping some rentals that make huge sense. And I'm doing a lot of creative financing. And I didn't really embrace creative financing at the time, but I did it. And I kept a lot of properties. I had to pay little to no money out of my pocket. So handwritten postcard was a huge success. So I decided to venture into another market, which I was scared to death, which at the time was probates. It was like, how do you do probates? So I remember sitting around with a group of investors, actually very famous guys right now. And I asked them their opinion on probates. And here's what they told me. Why would you ever mess with that crap? Like you're going to be an ambulance chaser, and I wouldn't even mess with it. Right then I decided I wanted to know everything about probates, because if these guys don't want to touch it, I want it. So those of you who don't know what probate's simply when somebody passes away, it's a legal notice to basically rectify their final affairs. So if they own any type of real estate, obviously a dead person can't sign to sell it, so they have to get a court order, and they assign an executor to the estate, and that person is in charge of selling the property. I figured if I could just get enough people like that I could get really, really good deals. So I developed the niche marketing. I developed ways to really find deals for little to no money. And so I got to known as kind of a guerrilla marketer, where a lot of my competitors were spending $10,000, $20,000 a month. I would spend less than 10% of that and make 3 times what they did. And I never engaged anybody on social media and took the challenges on it, but that's what I was known for, and that's what I still do today, and that's the philosophies of my teachings. So I dove into probate. So I took basically almost 2 years to find out everything about probates. I spent a ton of time at the courts. I spent a ton of time with title companies, with lawyers, with people going through probate, and I came up with a marketing system. And the bottom line is, my biggest regret today in real estate investing is I didn't start doing probates. It's cheap, it's the best deals, and typically these properties are vacant, they need repairs, and they're really easy to flip. And most of the sellers just want to get rid of them. So I documented my process, and I showed, actually I did over 100 probates, and basically just over a 2.5 year period. And they were by far my best deal. And the funny story about probates is I was told by my accountant, you need to do more deal types like this. I'm like, well, and before I did probates by accident, now I did them on purpose. So we came up with PPS, created the niche product and launched it out there. Probably the most thorough probate training out on the market. I'm told this, I have hundreds of testimonials on it. And at the time I offered it for $97. So at $97, I was giving away more than most gurus charging $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 at the time. So since then we've revamped priority probate system, and you can probably click a link. It'll either be below here or in the comment section. And we've incorporated everything we do from 2014 up to 2020. So here we are, 2014, 15, even the 16, social media is exploding. Everyone's learning about this new hip thing called wholesaling. And those people that took action, and you could just about pay any guru and come up with a basic marketing system, and you would do really well wholesaling. And for the most part, a lot of people did. So let's fast forward to where we are, 2016. I'm rolling in 2017. So my son, remember we talked back when he was 3 or 4 years old, he's now 17. And I know you guys know Zach's story, so I'm not gonna go on the whole thing, but at the time he was working at a grocery store and just said, you know, Dad, I'd like to do what you do. So I gave him a couple books, he read them. I said, man, this would be the ultimate journey if I could figure out how to get my son into the business. So the bottom line is I spent a lot of time with Zach on training him how to do the business. Now, a lot of you are going to say, you know, you probably gave him the golden spoon, you know, you solved everything. I got to be honest with you, I was brutal on the kid. My initial intention was actually to try to drive him out of the business because I saw how tough the business was getting. And if you guys can relate, if you have kids out there, you don't want to watch your kids suffer. But I will tell you, Zach doesn't give up on anything. He's actually very determined in what he wants to do. So bottom line is, he wanted to put out some bandit signs. I put him in touch with my sign vendor and made him pay for it. So he could appreciate what it was. So he would get phone calls, he had a script. Now at the time I told him, let's rehearse the script. He'd tell me, no, I got it all licked at, I'm good. So I watched him take these phone calls in on his cell phone, and he would struggle terribly through the script. And I said, Zach, you've got to practice your trade if you truly want to be good at it. So he then decided he was going to practice, and lo and behold, within a 90-day period, I think he wound up doing 3 deals off bandit signs in 2017. And I put him in charge of the bandit sign division. So at the time he was wrestling and we were traveling different parts of the state, and he would go out and stick out signs and they'd ring, and he'd figure out how to filter them. So in the beginning, I used to go on appointments with him to get him started. At the end, he wanted to take everything over. He's 17 years old. So remember I went back in the very beginning when I proved I did my first deal. When Zach did his first 3 deals, the proof of the concept was there and he was completely sold on the idea. So I had this dilemma. The kid, he's got to go to college, right? So bottom line, Zach's helping me flip properties, and then he gets, smart kid, gets always got good grades, never really had to study hard. He gets basically a scholarship to go to the University of Florida. And I had real mixed emotions at the time, so me and his wife decided it'd be good if he just got out and experienced the whole college thing. But he says, Dad, I want to be a real estate investor. So he says, listen, Dad, I've already done 2 years in high school, which he did one of the accelerated programs. He goes, I'll go away 2 years and I'll come back and I'll just jump in the company and run it. Well, he didn't wait the 2 years. While he was in his dorm room, he decided to deep dive into cold calling and basically got all of his I guess you call them roommates at the time, and they would just, it was like a call center. Dude, this kid was doing deals left and right from college, and I couldn't have been prouder from him. And actually he wound up staying up there basically for a year, and he decided he'd rather work in the business because he was making so much money at the time and then still finish his college degree. And I couldn't have been more prouder of the decision. So here we are, 2017. Traveling with wrestling tournaments. We're putting out signs, we're visiting with homeowners, and we're putting properties under contract. So Zach got to do everything from marketing to acquisitions. He got to see how the whole business works. And to this date, I'm more proud of what Zach's done. So he said, listen, I got my degree. I'm full in. So I said, listen, Zach, I want to take the Flip with Rick and turn it into like a university. And as I continue to grow my business and I learn new trades and I test out my business, I want to share that information with everyone who comes part of it. So the really cool thing about the Flip with Rick University is when you sign up with us, you get access to all the new products I create. So a lot of you have heard buzz about a new product I have coming out. The rapid offer system. I'm not going to go into it here, but probably one of the greatest products I've developed. And I've spent really a year and a half with Zach, my son, to truly make this product, in my opinion, the greatest product I've ever offered yet. And so for those of you that want to work directly with me, who like my story, as I said, I'm truly a real estate investor at the end of the day. That's what I do. My gift is teaching people how to connect with homeowners so they can fill their pipelines. And the rest of the stuff, to be honest with you, is your willingness to actually follow through on someone's program. Now, most programs I find out there, they just lack the marketing edge. My marketing edge is with the Flip with Rick University is off the hook with it. So I like to have fun. To me, it's what I bring home at the end of the day and how hard I have to work. I want to go out and have a good time. I've taken off multiple summers. I've taken off half a year before. I don't necessarily worry about money. What I want to do is always provide value to my sellers, my buyers, and anybody I work with in like real estate. So I love going into new markets and helping people out. It's one of my passions. And watching my son go from, can I do that, to I absolutely do it, to really the greatest student I've ever created. And those of you can really, teaching your children, it's a whole new level. And it can make you like super proud. Now, you can't force it on anybody. Like remember, he came to me, so it made it much, much easier. And that's my whole philosophy in real estate. So that's my story from start to finish. I probably forgot to mention, in 2004, I was able to fire my boss. I actually walked in the office and said, I quit. They begged me to stay. And I was like, no way, it's taken away from my business. So the moral of the story is the sooner you get started, the sooner you get through your struggles, and have an open mind when you go into real estate and learn how to become a complete real estate investor, because wholesaling is great and it gets you started, and I believe you should make a positive cash from day one. but you got to become a complete real estate investor. Otherwise, you're going to be pigeonholed, and you could go a couple of years without income, and it's a painful situation to be in if you ever experience. So I went through that, and my goal is to never have you go through it. So like right now in 2020, we're in massive change going on. So if you're not open to doing creative financing, you're not open to doing short sale flips, you're not open to like the lease options, I gotta tell you, like wholesaling is becoming extremely saturated because everybody thinks it's a quick flip, that's all you have to do. So eventually, I've been through this cycle before. What's the saturation is going to drive people out of the business because they're not going to make any money and they're going to go get their regular jobs. And then if you can stay in the lane like I did, 16 years, you'll more than make your money back. You just have to be able to become a complete real estate investor. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I love real estate because it's like a hunt for me. You go out, you hunt deals and you find them, and it's very fulfilling. And you get to connect with all sorts of people. Listen, real estate, in the end of the day, it has nothing to do with the real estate. You connect with people, and if you connect with enough people, you can solve enough problems and make a crap load of money. And I could do real estate from a wheelchair. I could do it if I lost my sight. It's a gift that will always give to me. So that's why I love it. So I don't really ever plan on retiring from real estate. So if you like the message, you want to find out more about how to work with me or how to get access to some of my specialty niche products, then do me a favor, comment on the link below, visit us at Flip with Rick on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and then if you truly want to work with someone like me, and the beauty of it is now my son works in the business and he's a huge part of my business, and I spend a lot of time with him. We talk on a daily basis and we go over business plans and the ever-changing market. So you get the 2 for 1 deal, and that's the real powerful of having Zach in it. And really, if a 17-year-old can figure it out, what's your excuse? So, by the way, I'm 50 now and I'm enjoying life, and I have a business that's thriving that my son's involved with, and he's made a commitment to help out with the Flip with Rick, and I love the energy he brings to it, and hopefully we can all work together. So I appreciate it, guys. Comment below, let's connect. If you want to talk to me, you want to talk to Zach about getting into the Flip with Rick University. If you want to be a complete real estate investor, I believe it takes we give you a full year to learn the businesses, whereas most of these programs are like 6, 8, 9, 12 weeks. There's no way I can teach you every strategy in that amount of time. You're not going to get your bang for your buck on it. So I appreciate it. Let's connect. Click the links below. Connect with me on social media, and go out and make a decision today. Make a decision. Do not wait 16 years down the road and go, I wish I could have, should have. Just take action. I was scared to death. I took action. That's why I'm sitting in front of you. And hopefully I can inspire someone like you to be in this game well after 16 years. So I appreciate it, guys. Talk to you soon.